This is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head on UATV. Even before the war in the East began, the Eastern Ukrainian economy was dying. Like so many areas in so many countries, the region had been deteriorating for years as tech and innovation made obsolete the need for large-scale factories and blue-collar traditions. But many Eastern Ukrainian cities are fighting back against the slide into poverty by embracing innovation and attracting investment. Mariupol is one of those cities. Mychailo Wynnyckyj has joined us today to talk about this city and its transformation. He's an associate professor at Lviv Business School and at Kyiv Mohyla Academy. He recently participated in a business forum in Mariupol, Ukraine. Mychailo, it's very nice to have you with us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. So what really drew me to wanting to talk to you today was I came across a post of yours on Facebook about your trip to Mariupol. Can you tell us about that post?
Well, honestly, it was a bit of a surreal experience at first because we didn't know exactly what we were expecting. It takes an awfully long time to get to Mariupol. Mariupol is it was basically a 12-hour trip, if not more, because the bus broke down on the way. But anyway, it takes about 6 hours to get about 150 kilometers, sort of thing.
Because it used to be straight from Donetsk. I've been to Mariupol.
Right. It used to be you would go from Kramatorsk to Donetsk and then from Donetsk to Mariupol. But obviously that road has been cut off, and the road from Donetsk to Mariupol used to be a 4-lane highway. But it's
2-hour or 1 hour trip.
Yeah. I mean, it was no big deal. But today it's obviously very difficult to get there because you're taking sort of village roads, and the roads, because of the amount of traffic, have been completely destroyed. But the surreal aspect was actually because of the fact that before the conference started, we had a morning tour, I guess, of the city, because we knew full well that we weren't going to have an awful lot of time to sort of look around, and we get to the seaside, and it's actually a very beautiful city. Obviously been run down for many years, but you can see that there's potential in the city. And we get to the seaside, and everybody sort of hops out of the bus, and we want to go off and take a look. And as we're standing on the seaside, all of a sudden the ground starts shaking, and there's these 3 explosions. And I mean, it's obviously distant, but it feels like you're in an earthquake, sort of thing.
Right.
And this was an artillery bombardment, which was approximately 10 kilometers from us.
Wow.
So on the one hand, you're in a business forum and you're talking about, how the potential of the city is there, and you're looking at the various possible tourist attractions and that sort of thing, and you're at a seaside, which has the ability to become a resort, and there's some infrastructure there that is actually very interesting. And then obviously, all of a sudden, you're realizing that 10 kilometers away there's artillery. But the thing is, the tour guide, he sort of turns around and says, "Oh yeah, well, don't worry about that. By the way, we have a wonderful yacht club here." And sort of without even batting an eye, he was just sort of switching things. And obviously, it's something that they've gotten used to.
This normalization,
which is really sad, quite frankly, because they've gotten used to something which is a terrible experience. And the day after we left, there was actually 4 fatalities from the Ukrainian Marines in a place called Vodyane, which is 15. It's basically a suburb of Mariupol, if you like. So, on the one hand, you've got potential, and you've got a desire to sort of recreate themselves, and obviously there's problems with doing that. And on the other hand, you've got this issue of the war is really close. It's something that you feel on a daily basis.
So, and this is a thing that trying to understand how close Mariupol is to this contact zone. I mean, if this is going on in the suburbs, and here we have Mariupol, this city was an industrial city. So I'm really fascinated by, we see a lot of cities in the East where they've stuck with that industrial, trying to cling to that industrialness. But what's so special about Mariupol?
Well, first of all, what's special about Mariupol is the sea. I mean, it's a seaside city, but that makes it special because Donbass generally is not associated with the sea. And actually, the people of Mariupol don't like to be called. They don't like their region to be called the Donbass. They're not from the Donbass. They're from Priazovia, which is an identity that has to do with the seaside, if you like, so near the Azov Sea, which I think is something that makes them very, very special. But at the same time, from an economic standpoint, we need to understand that this is a city that basically had, up until recently, 3 functioning factories. There was Azovmash, which is a huge machine building, sort of equipment manufacturing outlet, which has effectively been dying for the last 20 years, and most of its customers were in Russia, obviously not available markets anymore. It is the other one is Mariupolski Zavod Ilitcha, which is a non-ferrous metals kind of smelter plant, if you like. Huge employer. And that also is problematic now in terms of its future. And then you've got Azovstal, which is a steel manufacturing concern. In addition to the problem that it's a rust belt, it's also a monopolized rust belt, because the factories and the main employer is SKM, which is owned by Renat Akhmetov, Ukraine's richest oligarch, if you like. And the problem is that many of the supply chains have until recently been crossing the lines. So coal was coming in from the occupied territories. You would have, there would be a regional economy which was tied together, and suddenly that regional economy has been cut in half, if you like. And actually, one of the things that was talked about in Mariupol is that over the last week, things have become really quite clear as to what the future is, and the future is not bright for industry.
Right.
Up until now, there was this thing of trade going back and forth. Supply chains weren't completely cut off. It was this, again, surreal kind of situation where you're seeing artillery being lobbed on either side, and at the same time trains going back and forth.
Well, this was last week that President Poroshenko officially created this, or officially endorsed this, not endorsed, but the embargo that's cut
So basically
off trade.
now the supply chains have been cut, which means that over the next months we're going to actually see layoffs and the closing of plants, which is certainly something that's economically problematic from a standpoint of if you like, values and morals. A lot of people are saying, well, look, you're not supposed to be trading with people that are shooting at you. So clearly there's a dilemma there, which I don't really want to get into at the moment. The reality is that the economy is going south very quickly. And so the reason that we were there was to try to show and try to demonstrate and help people locally, if you like, activists or people that are a little bit more entrepreneurial, that there is an alternative. Because the city is going to be feeling, it's already felt a very economic downturn over the last couple of years, and it's going to get even worse.
So this, because you said this has been 20 years going on, but I know from some time I've spent in the East that many cities, like even in the United States, in these areas that have always been labor intensive, they often try to cling to that.
Right, and that's the issue. I mean, you've got examples of places like Pittsburgh in the States, or Yorkshire in England, and there are multiple. I mean, Silesia in Poland, sort of Rust Belt industrial centers that try to cling to their, if you like, proletarian culture, and this paternalism kind of thing.
But
and that's got to change.
Mariupol, however, is not. They're trying to reinvent themselves in some ways.
Yeah, I think that there is a section of the society that is trying to reinvent itself. There's some obviously there's some local politicians that are trying to think of new models. That's one of the reasons that we were invited there. And when I say we, I mean Lviv Business School in this particular case, because we brought a group of people that are small and medium enterprise owners, people that have started up small businesses. Some of them have grown into fairly substantial businesses, and basically the idea was not really to look at investment opportunities. The idea was to try to if you like, show how it can be done. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to be in a confrontational role with local government. At the same time, you need to realize that local government has its interests and business have its interests. And when we're talking about creation of civil society organizations around businesses and the idea of activist business and really, I mean, all of the things that we understand as being entrepreneurial. Innovation, small-scale innovation. One of the wonderful companies that was really popular as a model. It's called Zruby, or Tato Zrubiv, or Zrubiv Tato, which means my dad did it. And it's basically it's a company that makes children's toys that need to be assembled. And they're assembled with something that sort of a child will do with his dad. It's sorry to be gender perhaps improper, but that's the way that they're positioning themselves. It's sort of projects that a son would do with his dad. And these are things that are done they've become unbelievably successful from a financial point of view, actually, in Western Ukraine, and people in Mariupol are starting to get ideas of, hey, wait a minute, we can do that here. And in actual fact, from a resource perspective, they've got more, because, like I said, there's this idea of, there's this identity of the sea, which is not just a fisherman's kind of tour, but it's about tourism. It's about contacts with the West. It's or contacts with the world. And actually, from an environmental perspective, it's a cleaner city than some of the other cities of the Donbass.
So, with this reinvention here, who invited you? You said that going back,
it wasn't actually local government. This was just local activists, sort of thing. One of the main organizers was actually a young fellow who is from Donetsk originally. His name is Bogdan. He's set up a local bar, and after having to move from Donetsk to Mariupol, and he's gotten himself a sort of a group of other entrepreneurs around that are setting up cafes, restaurants, all sorts of creative spaces kind of concept. And this was obviously, they got some money from the United Nations Development Program to support this project, which I think is a very important thing. So there is actually quite a bit of Western donor money in the area. In the region, but I think that needs to be intelligently spent. And this was a project where we have an example of intelligent spending, which is good because it's got local support from not necessarily political forces, but sort of local grassroots people that are interested in models of how do we succeed by creating something grassroots again, and how do we create those networks amongst each other, and how do we learn from each other to be successful as small business people. One of the things that I do want to mention is that one of the sort of the solidarity forces behind these people is that Mariupol is actually a historical city. Mariupol is a spot where Kalmius, which is a very ancient river that flows through Donetsk into the Azov Sea, it's where it falls into the Azov Sea. And there used to be a Cossack fortress there. And a lot of these activists and a lot of the people, the locals, will sort of say that's our alternative identity, which we need to remember, because the industrial identity is good, but we're actually looking to build something new based on an older foundation, which I think is a kind of an interesting myth that's binding people together. I'm actually pretty optimistic about the future of the city if we can get around these periodic artificial earthquakes, shall we call?
Because this is, I mean, this proximity to they're kind of caught between these two different worlds, right? You're saying between the world of Russia and Ukraine, between the past, this industrial past, and trying to reorient themselves. And do you see with the government, with the local government there, has there been efforts from them for rebranding?
I think so. But the problem is that the local government, the mayor and the mayor's office, are actually representatives of Akhmetov and SKM. So there's actually political tension there, because the oblast level, who are people that are obviously appointed from Kyiv, those are the ones that are from a government perspective are driving the reinvention of the region, because they understand that it needs to be reinvented. And the local government still is representative of, if you like, the industrial concerned. So there is tension there politically. We didn't really get into that political tension too much, because the idea was not to try to change politics. The idea was to try to help local business people to become more successful and to reinvent themselves, because we really believe that I think that the model of Western Ukraine was, and the success of Western Ukraine and of Kyiv really is about grassroots activism. It's not necessarily about politics and trying to build political institutions. So
what did you take away what was your takeaway from what's going on with Mariupol?
Well, my takeaway was that this is a kind of a, when we talk in Kyiv about the fact that Ukraine's future is very similar to the first 20 years of the existence of Israel. In other words, a country that is constantly under existential threat. It's theoretically, that's the theory. When you talk about that in Kyiv, it sounds plausible. When you go to Mariupol, you realize how scary that future is, because it means defending yourself on a daily basis, and it means that the enemy is very close. And when I say the enemy, I think it's important to understand that geographically, Mariupol is the first step towards a potential land bridge between Russia and Crimea. So they feel that threat on a daily basis. And I think that they deserve any kind of help that we can give them to try to reinvent them. And at the end of the day, I'll say that, you know, if they do reinvent themselves, and I'm certainly hoping that they do, with a little bit of external help, it'll be a really neat place to take the family for a summer holiday. Kind of, you know, again, using the Israeli analogy, it's kind of, you know, there are some places on the Mediterranean just outside of the West Bank, yeah, where people take their kids for holidays. And I think that Mariupol has the potential to be that kind of place. Innovative, small business, tourism oriented, great architecture, in horrible shape, but you know, I think that's it. When you're looking for opportunities, you're looking for places that are really, really, really on the ground floor. I think Mariupol has actually hit basement at this point, so it's got nowhere else to go but up.
So there's a lot of hope there.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Today we've been talking with Mychailo Wynnyckyj, an associate professor with Lviv Business School and with Kyiv Mohyla Academy. We've been talking about Mariupol and the hope for the future for a rebirth and a reinvention. This has been Vivica Williams with UATV Head to Head. Thank you for watching.